Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating, almost hidden blueprint inside ancient biblical texts. It's not just dry history, guys. It's a literal masterclass on how early Christians were strictly mandated to handle intense public mockery. We're going to dive deep into the psychology and the conflict resolution of an ancient culture war that, honestly, shaped the modern world.
We're starting with a pretty blunt historical moment. Picture this: Roman governor Festus is listening to the Apostle Paul defend his faith, and Festus essentially just looks at him and calls him an overeducated lunatic. Basically, Paul, your books are making you crazy. It's the ultimate ancient eye roll, and it proves that ridiculing Christianity isn't some modern internet invention, right? Early believers were taking heat from high-level intellectuals right out of the gate.
The scriptures actually categorize these mockers, or scoffers, into four very distinct groups. It's like a dossier. First, you've got prophesied last days scoffers who mock the idea of Christ's return. Then, the intellectuals, like the philosophers in Athens who literally dismissed Paul as a babbler. After that, you have skeptics of spiritual manifestations. And finally, the heavy hitters, political and religious authorities, using their institutional weight to publicly humiliate believers. To give you a perfect example of that third group, the skeptics, just look at the day of Pentecost. The disciples are having this profound, history-altering spiritual experience, speaking in tongues. And the onlookers' hot take? They completely dismiss it as public drunkenness. Oh, they're just full of new wine. It's a classic clash, really. Natural skepticism totally failing to process the supernatural, which leads to this incredibly absurd conclusion. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of the Ungodly and the Inner Workings of a Scoffer. What's so amazing about the apostolic texts is that they don't just record the outward insults, they dissect the internal psychology driving the mockery. We get to look right under the hood. According to the epistles, these folks fit a very specific behavioral profile. They're arrogant, they twist divine grace into a free pass for bad behavior, and they actively reject authority. Because they lack true spiritual depth, they overcompensate with great swelling words and flattery to get ahead. Their endgame? To intentionally sow discord and rip communities apart. But the crucial takeaway here is that the biggest threat wasn't necessarily the Roman soldier standing outside. It was the infiltrator on the inside. The Epistle of Jude warns about mockers who, quote, secretly slipped in unawares. Imagine them sitting right there at the communal dinners, the love feasts, acting as hidden blemishes. They were pretending to be faithful while quietly trying to dismantle the entire community from within. Which brings us to the mandate to respond, the rule of gentle defense. So knowing this intense psychological profile and facing all this heavy verbal opposition, how on earth were early Christians supposed to react? Well, they were mandated to contend for the faith. But hold on, because this was incredibly counterintuitive. Contending absolutely did not mean aggressive retaliation, or hostility, or jumping into endless arguments. It was defined as a highly disciplined, non-carnal spiritual endeavor rooted in personal holiness. The bottom line, you cannot fight worldly mockery with worldly hostility. The contrast here is just stark. The mockers were using carnal weapons, right? Swollen words, flattery, division, and railing accusations. Believers, on the flip side, were required to put on spiritual armor. They were commanded to use faith as a shield, to walk in total meekness, to avoid foolish questions, and to make sure their defense was marked by solid, uncondemnable speech. They were literally fighting a different kind of war, bound by a totally different rule book. The texts are so strict about not slandering people that they give us this fascinating cosmic example. Jude brings up the archangel Michael having a dispute with the devil himself. And even in that extreme, unimaginable scenario, Michael refused to hurl a railing accusation or throw a cheap insult. He just relied entirely on divine authority and said, "The Lord rebuke you." It established a massive boundary. A believer must never stoop to the level of the mocker. Jesus Christ himself set the absolute gold standard for this non-retaliatory posture. He didn't just tell his followers to bite their tongues and tolerate their enemies. No, he commanded them to actively love them, to bless the people cursing them, and to do actual good to those who hated them. When faced with mockery, the mandated Christian response was radically simple, yet incredibly hard. Actively overcome evil with good. To actually pull this off in real life, the book of Jude outlines this brilliant, tiered pastoral triage system. Step 1, show real compassion to those who are simply doubting. Step 2, for those getting pulled deeper into error, execute an urgent rescue, literally snatching them from the fire. And step 3, for the most corrupted, show mercy but keep very strict boundaries. It's a highly nuanced strategy, and it is totally focused on restoration instead of just crushing an opponent.
Let's transition to our final section, trusting the ultimate judge and finding freedom from retaliation.
Now, you're probably wondering, how could these believers endure brutal public shame, mockery, and persecution, and just never fight back? The secret was their profound concept of justice. They were completely freed from the exhausting burden of seeking personal revenge. Because they were commanded to avenge not yourselves, they entrusted ultimate justice to an omniscient God. Knowing that a perfect reckoning was 100% guaranteed, allowed them to just step back and give place unto wrath. To really cement this trust, the scriptures laid out a massive historical track record of divine interventions. The texts pointed back to the flood in Noah's day, the ashes of Sodom and Gomorrah, the judgments on Egypt, and the total collapse of Babylon. These huge historical archetypes were meant to reassure believers that no ungodly nation and no mocker operates outside of God's sovereign control. Perfect, impartial justice is an inevitable reality. And once again, Jesus serves as the ultimate archetype of this trust. During his trial and crucifixion, he faced the most intense, concentrated mockery imaginable, from politicians, religious elites, soldiers, everyone. Yet, when he was reviled, he didn't revile back. He endured the horror by simply committing his soul to the righteous judge. That moment became the ultimate, defining blueprint for how believers handle opposition. So, wrapping up this explainer, we're left with a really provocative question. When you look at today's intense cultural clashes and how faith is debated and mocked in the public square, are we just watching human nature repeat an ancient blueprint? And more importantly, what would our modern world actually look like if people applied this ancient standard of gentle defense and active love? It's a massive thought to carry with you. Keep seeking to understand the ideas that shape our world, and we'll see you next time.